I'm Eli Schwartz, and this is SEO in 2025.
Eli, what's your number one SEO tip for 2025?
Everyone's been talking about using AI for SEO, and I think they're focusing on the wrong aspect of AI for SEO. I don't think AI should be used to create content. I think AI should be used to understand users and figure out who your users are and create content. You can use AI to create some of that content, but really the magic of AI is understanding the things that you wouldn't know already about your users.
Any particular AI that you're using?
I was using ChatGPT, then I moved over to Gemini. I tried Perplexity. Perplexity, it always introduces itself with repeating the prompt, and I find it really annoying. And I've just started using Claude, and I think Claude out of all of them is the best.
Okay. So how do you use AI to find your best users?
So I'll ask it questions and say, imagine, and actually this is one I tried. If I wanted to get some ideas on what to post on LinkedIn, I could say something like, imagine I'm Eli Schwartz, the author of Product-Led SEO. What should I post on LinkedIn? And it comes up with these fantastic ideas. So I'm not asking it to write the LinkedIn post for me. I'm asking it to give me ideas. And I like doing that for persona research. So if I'm working with a client that's a retailer and this retailer sells one particular kind of product, I would say something like, I'm a retailer. I sell this product. Let's say I sell makeup. Tell me who my persona should be. And then AI, they're kind of all the same. They'll spit out ideas, lots of useless stuff. And then it'll have some interesting nuggets. And it'll say, here's Becky. She's a buyer of this makeup. She's this age. She lives in this place. And then you can follow up and say, what kind of content does Becky read? How much time does Becky spend on TikTok? How much time does Becky spend on search? What kind of computer does Becky have? Does Becky use a phone? Does Becky use a computer? So these are really detailed things. And then from there, you can really, personify and get an image in your mind of what your user looks like. And then from there, you can start writing content. And I think that's the part that's always missing in SEO, has always been missing, not just with AI, where when you focus on keywords, you go to a keyword research tool, you put in your primary keyword. Again, we're pretending we're a makeup retailer. Put in the word makeup, and it gives you things related to makeup, but they're not really attached to that buyer, to that user. So if you take all those steps back and say, well, I'm a retailer, I sell online, obviously, because we care about SEO, and you figure out all those things. Now, these are things that you could do before AI. And I spent years at SurveyMonkey, so I fell in love with the concept of building surveys and asking users questions and learning really interesting things. So of course you could do that before AI, but AI allows you to sort of ask a fake person and get ideas. Now, is it perfect? Who knows? You have to do a survey to match that up, but it does give you a different direction to go in.
Do you need to feed it quite a bit more data as well? Because obviously it's got that existing knowledge, but you want to make sure that that knowledge is personalized and it understands what your brand is about as well. So what data do you feed it, and what prompts do you give it?
That's an interesting point. I think when it comes to SEO, there's a lot of useless data we look at. And the answer doesn't change if you add more data. Actually, it's not just SEO, a lot of marketing. So the answer doesn't necessarily change. So for example, going back to surveys, there's a concept of statistical significance, which to any listener or reader that's not aware of statistical significance, it's just an idea that the data you get matches the actual real life scenario. So if you wanted to know who's going to win an election, you don't have to ask every single voter. You ask a percentage of voters, a very, very small percentage of voters, and then you get a margin of error. And that, because your answer is significant, you can know that you're sort of representing the truth. Now, when it comes to surveying for marketing purposes, you may have a really wide margin of error, but if you ask a question like, do most users like vanilla ice cream or chocolate ice cream? And you have 51% of users say they like chocolate and 49% say they like vanilla. That's not necessarily significant. If you go into another audience, you may get 60-40 or you may get something else, 55-45. However, you know that it's unlikely, actually 51-49 is not great, but if it's 60-40, you know that it's unlikely to ever be something like flopped, where now 60% like vanilla and 40% like chocolate. So it's not necessarily significant. You don't know the precise number. So that's where I think a lot of marketing data is trying to get to that perfect answer. So if you feed it more information and say, well, I'm a retailer, I have this amount of customers, my products cost this amount, then you may not necessarily get more information. So at a base level, you can say, I sell budget makeup, and then get it. I don't know if that's a thing because I don't wear makeup, but you could say, I sell budget makeup, and then you'll get an idea of what kind of personas come back. You can say, I sell luxury watches. Now, you don't need to say, I sell luxury watches that cost this very specific amount, or I sell watches in this very specific neighborhood. The answers might not necessarily change. So base level, ask a general prompt and say, this is what I'm trying to do. And I get back information and it gives me ideas. I'm not building an entire business off those personas.
So how do you build enough confidence that the AI does actually understand most of the time who your user is?
So again, that's a complicated one. So I don't think most marketers really understand their personas when they do any sort of marketing because they never really ask. So now I don't know that when I get back these personas, I got the perfect personas. I know exactly which one's going to spend more money, and that's where I should do all of my marketing. So if I get back 3 personas, that's 3 more personas than I had to begin with. So again, it's not like I know that this persona is better than, persona A is better than persona B, which is even better than persona C. It's more like, oh, here are 3 places I can start writing some sort of personalized content. The bigger question is, I got back 3 personas. Are there 15 personas? And actually, there probably really aren't that many personas. So as I'm diving a little bit deeper into things, say I have a travel product, and I've tried this specifically with travel products. There aren't that many different types of travelers. There's like the budget traveler, there's the luxury traveler, there's the family traveler, and then little things in between, but there aren't that many. Yes, there's a solo teenager traveler. There's the Gen Z traveler, right? There are all those things, but the nuances between all of them are not necessarily that different from a marketing standpoint.
Okay, so you don't feed AI your personas, you ask AI to generate your personas.
Oh, I feed them back. Oh, absolutely. No, I feed them back. Once I get those personas, say, tell me more about this persona.
But I guess a way of testing AI also is if you already have personas, seeing how closely AI's persona would actually match your existing personas.
Oh, of course. Yeah, so that's more work. And I'm trying to make this easy. I'm using the AI cheat. The more work would certainly be a user survey. So I have this all the time with clients and potential clients where we talk about their potential users. And it's baffling to me when I say, what does your user look like? And they say, how am I supposed to know? And I say, ask them. I mean, if you're doing something, you want product market fit, you should know what the market looks like. So you don't get to product market fit. You can get there accidentally, but it's really understanding your users and creating for those users.
So you also talk about creating prompts to understand buyer pain points. So, I mean, can you share a little bit more about the specific prompts that you actually use?
Yeah. So say I understood what a persona is, and we're going to keep with our budget makeup example. So I understand what the persona is. And then I can say, well, how many websites does a person like this look at? Do we know if that's the right answer or not? It's hard to know unless you do a real survey. But it's collecting all that information from all the places it's sort of learned from. So like Reddit, where people might have gone to Reddit and say, I go to all these websites. So you can ask it those kinds of questions to really dig deeper into who this persona is. And what I like about this is you don't have to wait for all those survey responses and real users to answer it. You're getting an idea. And again, there are accuracy concerns. You have to test it, and I wouldn't spend all of my marketing budget on it. But you could really dive deeper into it as if you're talking to that person. So when again, selling for the budget makeup, I can ask it follow-up questions. How much do they spend? How many websites do they look at? What kind of phones does this person use? Do they use an iPhone? Do they use an Android? Do they use the latest version of the iPhone? Because that might tell me more information about how much budget they have. How often do they buy? So I'm almost inquiring of a real customer. Again, caveat, it might hallucinate, but that is all so much more information than I was going to have without doing this process.
Yeah, hallucinate was the word I was going to use next, actually. For the different AIs that you've tested, have you seen roughly the same level of hallucinations?
I feel like Gemini hallucinates more. I don't know why. But yes, they all hallucinate. You can force them into the hallucinations, which is also kind of funny. So like you can say, I'm asking, I want to do the makeup, and like, what makeup would you use as a weapon? And then you get like some crazy responses. I'm looking at this as this is a first step, because so many marketers don't have this first step where they don't understand their customer at all. And this is totally not new to AI, totally not in any particular industry. And the thing I always say, whenever I'm asked about this, like I spent years at SurveyMonkey. As a part of SurveyMonkey's onboarding, every single employee had to get a user account and create a SurveyMonkey account. Almost no employees use those accounts. So they didn't understand why people use surveys, why people did anything. It's like when you talk to a Google Ads rep, like how many Google Ads reps have actually ran a Google Ads campaign? Or with Google Analytics, the people the product managers that are working on Google Analytics, how many of them have a website that they use to analyze Google Analytics, or is it just a product? So this extra level of trying to understand your customer is something that everyone can benefit from. So if you don't have access to your customers, AI is a start. So will it hallucinate? Of course. Is it, perfectly accurate? No, but it's better than nothing.
So because it seems to be just a starting point, I presume that you're not linking this up with other software to attempt to collate the answers in different places and actually generate a database of personas or other things like that.
No, but I probably should.
And what about how this fits into an overall content strategy or strategy? Is there an ideal length of time between each communication with the AI? Do you just do this maybe on a quarterly basis? Should you do it quite regularly?
I look at all marketing as iterative. So generally, I think everyone should be updating their marketing around the users they're learning more information about. So I don't know that I would necessarily continuously prompt, because I don't know that you're going to get new information, but I would always update anything I know about my personas based on real world experience dealing with those users. And one thing I would say is, and tying this back very specifically into SEO. So I think a lot of, when you ask about like content roadmaps and content marketing, a lot of marketers, they create content that's very much at the top of the funnel. That's not written for any specific user. It's just written. And this idea of understanding a persona helps you understand your buyer's journey and your user funnel. I think SEO is the best fit at mid funnel, not at bottom of funnel, because there's not so much search, and that might be the kind of place that paid marketing is more successful. Top of funnel is those broad keywords. It's okay if you want to generate traffic, but doesn't necessarily generate conversions.
So top of funnel doesn't use personas?
Top of funnel can use personas, but you're just sort of driving traffic. And I think a lot of top of funnel is going to end up going away as AI is integrated into search. But really understanding your users, your specific users, you can better understand what mid funnel means, because now you're focused on a funnel. So top of funnel, early in my career, I worked at an automotive website, and our top of funnel was the word cars, as if like someone buying a car, they didn't even know what they want to do, and we ranked on the word cars. That concept obviously has gone long away. So it's this idea of, who your user is, you create content for that user. Maybe it's top of funnel, maybe it's mid funnel, maybe it's bottom of funnel, but it really starts with knowing your user. So now you know the funnel.
Superb. If an SEO is struggling for time, what should they stop doing right now so they can spend more time focusing on and doing what you suggest in 2025?
So I think a lot of times SEOs spend too much time reporting. So they're getting metrics that don't necessarily move the needle. So knowing the granularity around click-through rate for a specific keyword doesn't help you necessarily make better decisions, or knowing a position move from position 8 to position 7 doesn't help you make better decisions. It's difficult when your management or your client expects this level of reporting, but I'd say a lot of reporting is never looked at, never opened. So if an SEO is looking to take back time in their day, I would try to have some of those conversations and push back on the reporting. I know there was a job I had where I spent, I think, 1 to 2 hours per day, including on weekends, building this Google sheet, populating numbers from Google Analytics and populating numbers from Google Search Console. And then I discovered that no one I sent this Google sheet to ever opened it. And I did that by accident because I went on vacation and I forgot to update it. And then I sent I don't remember if I sent an apology or just waited for somebody to say something, and no one ever said anything. And I just stopped. That day I stopped doing the reporting and no one ever said anything. So if you can find that you're spending time doing reporting and it's not moving the needle and no one really is making decisions based on that information, I think you can cut that out.
And I guess at the level of detail that you have in reports as well, it's easy for SEOs just to include everything maybe that some analytics package spits out and automatically include that, or create a PDF from that. At least have conversations with your client and determine the metrics that are key to them and their business.
Oh, absolutely. I just think that, if you have that conversation, understand how they're using the data, or, accidentally stop giving the data and see what happens. But it's sort of the issue is that sometimes SEOs want to look like they're busy and adding a lot of value. Find those other things. Do the persona research to add the value rather than sending useless reports that people might not look at.
Eli Schwartz is author of Product-Led SEO, and you can find him over at productledseo.com. Eli, thanks so much for being part of SEO in 2025.
Thank you, David.
I've been your host, David Bain. Get your copy of SEO in 2025, the book, over at SEOin2025.com.